Necessary Wagers. It is week 10, week 11 in NFL and college football. Nick is on vacation this week, so you've got just me doing it solo. All right, big week. Let's recap for a second here. Nick came in at 5-7. Both of us, by the way, have picked for a lock, Nick's lock. He has the over in tonight's game, and my 5-point play, I am taking the Cowboys. So we've got picks tonight still to go, but Nick was 5-7. I was 9-3, including a perfect 6-0 in college football this week. Great week for me. Hit everything, hit the lock, hit a few of them relatively easily. I have now opened up quite a large lead on Nick, who was leading for most of the show. I am up 95 units. Nick, with a 5-7 week, is up 43 units, albeit he can close the gap with a win tonight with his lock. Let's get into it right away. Like I said, I had a good week of college, which I've been struggling with this year relative to NFL. I didn't have a great week of NFL, but let's start in college. Let's start with a pick that was my lock of the week. That was Nick's 4-point play, I believe, and that is Texas going out and beating the doors off of Vanderbilt. They won 34-31 in the end, but the game was not as close as that final score would have indicated. Brutal if you took the game later, because the line went to Texas -3.5, and Vanderbilt backdoored you there. But Texas, I've been saying, I think are going to come on towards the end of the year, where I thought Vanderbilt was going to fall off at some point. They certainly did here. They almost lost the week before to Missouri. They come out and lose a game, again, handily. It was not as close as the final score indicated. Arch finally put together a game against a pretty good team, at least a team ranked in the top 15. And Texas looked like, listen, if Texas, with their schedule remaining, can win out, I don't think it's likely. I think it's possible that they win 2 of the next 3. But if they can win out, give themselves a chance at an at-large bid. They would have a lot happen in order to get to the SEC championship. But in terms of just looking for that at-large bid, not the automatic bid, they give themselves a chance. That was a must-win. Every game from now on is a must-win for Texas. I had it as my lock at 1.5. Nick had it as his 4-point play. We were both accurate with that. We both took the side. I took the over. I was right. Nick took Tennessee. He was wrong. Oklahoma went into Tennessee and got a big win there in what was essentially a loser leaves town game. Tennessee right now, it is pretty unlikely that they have any chance of making the playoff. This was a disappointing game for them. Even though I took the over, I did say on the show that if I had to take the spread, I would have taken Tennessee. Nick did take Tennessee. And they were a complete letdown. That was another game where they lost by 6, and that was not as close as the score indicated. Oklahoma were in control of the game for the vast majority of the game. I thought that Oklahoma was a team that had looked good in the start of the season and was going to sort of reveal themselves not to be as good toward the end of the year, which I think is still sort of true. And I think that was just a disappointing performance from Tennessee at home in a game where you have to win. I mean, it's pretty evident that you're not going to get in with 3 losses with your schedule. And that was a game you had to win. And you're a favorite in the game. You're what most people would consider to be the better team, at least on paper. And you go out and put up a stinker like that. That was a terrible, terrible loss for Tennessee. Defensively, they were just not up to par as where they should have been. I also gave you some winners in the winners in the Big Ten. We had Illinois getting back on track. Nick had USC. They didn't cover, but they ended up winning. They look like a team now that have an outside track to the to an at-large bid, at least for the playoffs. And that was one of the more notable games in college football. Neither of us took this game, but Miami with a gigantic loss to SMU. Very surprising loss, in my opinion. And Miami, again, late in the season, has lost a road game that they had no chance of making the playoff if they had lost. This is one of those games. Miami is now really on the outside looking in. They have to win the ACC to get in at this point. And so we'll see what happens there. But I was very surprised by that. I have been harping Miami on this show the whole year. I took a future out on Miami to win the championship. I was surprised that they lost to Louisville. I was super surprised they lost to SMU. They have just not looked good. Carson Beck has certainly not looked good, certainly not against Louisville. Putting up 20 points against SMU is just not going to be good enough when you have to win to get into the playoff. So that was just an abysmal performance there, and probably the biggest result in college football this week in terms of the full playoff picture, especially as it pertains to at-large bids. It's great for the teams that are not going to win their conference but have a chance at an at-large bid. Texas Tech, I gave you. They won easily. They are, in my opinion, the clear front runner in the Big 12. They have a massive game against BYU, which I'll get to in the picks. They look really good. Besides the loss to Arizona State, they have looked terrific the whole season. They spent an insane amount of money in the offseason. So they should be looking this good. They look great. And then we had a lot of stability at the top 10, which is sort of staying where it is right now with Texas A&M, Indiana, Ohio State, what have you. In the NFL had a terrible week last week. They bounced back heavy this week. Terrific slate of games, particularly in the early window, but the late window also provided two great games that came right down to the finish line. My lock of the week, the Kansas City Chiefs. Me and Nick were both on the over. I was 0 for 2 on that. He was 0 for 1 on that. Over didn't hit. Very close to hitting. But the Chiefs just were not good enough yesterday. Particularly Patrick Mahomes was not good enough. The Chiefs are, again, like I said, I had said about Miami earlier, the Chiefs are a team that I've been harping. I think this team can win the championship. I still do think the Chiefs can win the championship. They normally do lose to the Bills in the regular season, so I'm not too deterred by that. But yesterday they were just simply not good enough. And that was a game where, yes, they did lose by 7. They had a Hail Mary attempt, 2 Hail Mary attempts. One was extremely close at the end, but the Bills really did control that game from the outset. They went down early, but brought it back, and the Bills were in serious control of the game for a while, it felt like, in the second half. I never really felt that I was in it with Kansas City. I felt the over I was in it with, especially once the Bills went up 14. I had a feeling Kansas City was just going to score. I did not think that the Bills would not score past that, but it never felt alive with Kansas City. They just didn't feel like they were going to do it the whole night. So I was more in tune to the over, but that was a pretty dominant performance by the Bills in terms of who they're playing and what I expected from them. I gave you Pittsburgh +3. Loved it. Took it money line in last second as well. They go out and beat the Indianapolis Colts, who I have been saying I think will turn into a pumpkin at some point this year. And I think that first game might have been yesterday. Their schedule does get a little bit harder as we move on. They sort of did come back down to earth. I mean, Daniel Jones threw an interception. He didn't look terrific. Rodgers looked better than he has in past games. I throw that Cincinnati game out because Cincinnati's defense is atrocious. Rodgers looked better. The Steelers missed a couple of opportunities in the red zone where they could have even made this a bigger score. That was a much-needed performance by the Steelers, very much needed, and a little bit of a come-to-earth moment for the Colts, who have been riding a heavy on their strength of schedule early in the season. We'll see what happens there because the Jaguars did get a win. Like I said, the late window was fantastic as well. Jaguars went to overtime, scored a touchdown. Raiders came down, scored a touchdown, and missed the 2-point conversion. Geno Smith threw a ball that was batted right back to him. That was a big win for the Jaguars, much needed win. It's not great that they were taken to overtime in a 2-point conversion by a pretty bad Raiders team, but a win is a win. That does not show up in the standings how much you win. There's no style points in the NFL. 5-3 for the Jaguars, who now are 1 game back in the loss column behind the Indianapolis Colts, who have not had their bye yet. So that was a significant result. The Bears and Bengals game was unbelievable. It gave a run for its money the Giant Bronco game for a game of the year. Back and forth stuff. The Bengals defense is awful. They once again cost the offense the game. Joe Flacco has come in for Joe Burrow and hasn't missed a beat. He's looked very good, which you wouldn't know by the record because their defense cost them the game against the Jets, cost them the game against the Bears on Sunday. Those were 2 games that were extremely winnable, frankly, should have been won by the Bengals, and they did not, and that will surely come back to bite them badly toward the end of the year. And so that's just a mess of a situation with their defense. It really doesn't matter who they have at quarterback, as you can tell, because Flacco's looked good. The defense just cannot get a stop. We had the Patriots winning by 1 point, missed extra point by the Falcons. The Patriots, another team that I think has been heavy on the strength of schedule. I'll get to that in the picks as well. And obviously, not a lot of different sports get talked about here on this show for right now, at least, but just an unbelievable World Series. The Dodgers end up winning, complete heartbreak for Toronto. The first game, Toronto had a chance to win the game. The ball got stuck in the fence, preventing them from scoring a run. The Dodgers, I believe it was Hernandez, made an unbelievable double play to win them that game. The Blue Jays completely controlled Game 7 and led by 2 going into the 8th, gave up a home run, led by 1, gave up a home run to tie it to a guy who had no hits in the whole series. That player, Rojas, then made an unbelievable throw to get IKF at home plate. Very close call, a lot of very controversial call. He was out at home. Dodgers loaded the bases. They didn't get in. Then they hit a home run. Yamamoto coming in off of 0 days rest. Just an unbelievable series. I think probably the greatest series of any sport I've ever watched. It had an 18-inning game. It had an insane Game 7. The Blue Jays had a man on second, no outs to tie the game late in the 11th, I believe it went to. Unbelievable World Series. So while we don't really talk much about baseball, and I'm not a huge baseball fan, that was, as a casual observer, that was unbelievable. And you just have to tip your cap because that was just something really special to watch. So let's get into it now. Nick is not here, obviously, but I will be giving you his picks as well, and I'll give you my thoughts on them. All right, let's get into college. Georgia barely beat Florida. Now, listen, I think that Florida are much better than their record and ranking. Obviously, they're not ranked, but their record and position says they are. They had a couple of close games against good teams. They've had a gauntlet of a schedule. They've had injuries. They've had everything. Coach firings, you name it. So I'm not looking at that and saying, oh, wow, Georgia will barely beat Florida. Florida's not bottom of the barrel. They're going out to Mississippi State. I took Mississippi State last week, getting 4.5. I said it was a crazy line, and I was right. They won the game outright. But Mississippi State have had a tough schedule, as everyone in the SEC has. They had a bad loss to Texas that they should have won. And they're not that bad of a team. So, because of that, Georgia is only laying 7.5. Now, while Mississippi is not that bad of a team. Georgia is a pretty good team. They're not the Georgia that we're used to, which is why I think a lot of people are down on them because they're used to this powerhouse Georgia. But you take that Georgia uniform and put whoever you want on it instead of Georgia, and it's the same team. They look pretty good. They're number 5 in the country for a reason. Their only loss is to Alabama, who are a very good team. Laying 7.5 here, noon game. I would be more worried if this was at night. Noon game on ESPN, under the radar spot here. You don't have really that big tailgating going on when it's at noon. You don't have the crazy atmosphere that you would have at night, the cowbells and all that. So I think Georgia, being in a bit of a dogfight versus Florida is pretty beneficial to them here because they're not sleeping on anybody. They're not sleepwalking through anything. So they're going to be up for this game. Mississippi State are good, but they are, or they're mediocre, but they are bottom of the barrel in terms of the SEC. Georgia fighting for that SEC title spot. That's going to be a race. And I like a -7.5 here. So give me the Bulldogs. Nick is staying with this game. He is going on the opposite end of me, sort of. He is going with Mississippi State plus 3.5 for the first half. Like I said, I'm on Georgia, so I'm not loving it. Both of those things could happen, though. I see what he means about Mississippi State, and maybe they'll get off to a hot start. But I think the fact that they won last week and Georgia was in a dogfight might change that. I probably wouldn't go with that. I'd probably, in fact, take the opposite of that, for the reasons I just mentioned. But we are on the same game there on opposite sides. My 2-point play, sticking with them. Talked about it earlier in the show. Texas Tech, I think, is a serious threat. This is the game. The biggest game in the Big 12 this year outside of the championship will be this game, BYU versus Texas Tech. I think BYU is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. I think BYU has gotten away with it a couple of times, certainly in Big 12 play. You look at some of the results here. Now, BYU is ranked 8th in the country. They are 8-0, so give them their due. They deserve to be 8th in the country, no question about it. But you think about scraping by Colorado, who we've seen now are atrocious. Colorado are really, really bad. They got destroyed. They were down 43-0, I think, at halftime. It was definitely 40-0 at one point in the first half. To Utah, Utah are good, but they're not unbelievable. Colorado were just ravaged by Arizona, who is middle of the pack in the Big 12. So they barely beat Colorado. They really barely beat Arizona. They got so lucky to win that game against Arizona. It was double overtime, and they scored right at the death of regulation. They barely beat Utah at home. And now you face Texas Tech at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. in Lubbock. Tortillas flying everywhere. That's 10 a.m. local in Provo. I think Texas Tech, and I'll get to it later because I've got this game on another unit play. I think Texas Tech rolls them out of the building. And first half -4, I think this is a blowout. I'm calling a blowout here. First half -4. That jumped out at me when I first saw it. Give me first half Texas Tech. All right. Let's go back to Nick's picks. He actually has an all SEC slate this weekend. Very typical of him. He has a severe SEC bias. All right. He is going with, I'm going to just read his 2-point and his 3-point at the same time because they are the same game with different, with different connotations. So it's Texas A&M over 49.5. Texas A&M, the total game, Texas A&M Missouri over 49.5. Texas A&M, he's also got for his 3-point play -6.5. Now, when I do this show, I map out about 20 to 25 games that I might pick, and I'll probably end up betting them all in real life. And then I narrow it down to my 5 favorite. This was on my list. Love Texas A&M here. Missouri are they were surprising this year. They've been good, 6-2 in the SEC. It ranked, I believe they're ranked 18th, 19th now. But Texas A&M is a wagon. Texas A&M are a real wagon. They've got a legitimate case to being the number 1 team in the country. They have some seriously good wins, namely Notre Dame on the road. They're a really good team, and I think they're on steady course to be headed straight to the SEC championship game. Missouri still's got work to do. Missouri's not in the class of the SEC. Whoever's going to be the SEC championship, they're not in that class. So I love this pick. I like the over too. I'm a little cautious on the over. Noon game. Texas A&M's defense can be good, can be really good. Some weeks can be okay. Other weeks, a little bit of an inconsistency there. But so I'm not in love with that over pick, but he has made it as 2, and he's given the bigger unit play to Texas A&M. That I do like. Again, Texas A&M is really good. Missouri is not terrible, but you're in a different weight class when you take on the Aggies this year. All right. So that was his 2 and 3. My 3-point play. I'm sticking in the Big 12 with my picks, and I'm going West Virginia first half, laying 3.5. And I just talked about it. Colorado are insanely bad. This game's at noon in West Virginia. There'll be about 2 people in the stands. There'll be about 2 people watching on TNT. And you've got 2 teams that have to win out to go to a bowl. Neither of them will. Probably outside of Oklahoma State, definitely the 2 worst teams in the Big 12. Yeah, I'm confident saying that. The 2 worst teams in the Big 12 outside of Oklahoma State. Colorado are a mess. They are just really bad. They have lost their last 2 games to Utah and Arizona by a combined score of 105-24. 105-24 in conference play against Utah, who was unranked at the time and are inconsistent, and Arizona, who is okay. I think this is like an atrocious game to pick because it's just 2 terrible teams. But noon Eastern, 10 a.m. in Boulder, really bad team. You don't normally see teams get beat 105-24 in 2 games. I mean, you don't see that in general, but you don't see it. And then the next couple of games, they just turned it on. It's normally indicative of starting to fall apart as the year ends. So give me West Virginia laying 4. I'm not confident enough because you'd have to bet West Virginia to bet them for the whole game. West Virginia is not really much better. But I will take them -3.5 in the first half. Really just need 1 touchdown lead. Less than that, that's not a big deal for me. So I like a -3.5 in the first half. All right. Well, I read Nick, so let me go to mine. Notre Dame Navy out in South Bend. Navy looked good to start this year. Fall off a little bit. Notre Dame, the opposite, looked bad to start the year. Turned it on a little bit. I'm going with another first half bet. Over 29.5. The total number, I think, is in the 50s for the whole game, so I'm scared of that number, especially involving Navy, and it's a gigantic spread, so I'm worried about Notre Dame turning the gas pedal off if they're up by a lot in the second half. So I'm not touching the full game over, but it's not going to be a blowout in the first half, obviously, so much so that you take off your foot off the pedal. So give me the first half over 29.5. I actually think you could see Notre Dame cover that themselves. I really think even if Notre Dame doesn't cover it themselves, you're really going to need 6 points from Navy in the first half. Might be a tall task for them, but I like that. I'm scared. I want to take the full game, but it does scare me a little bit with a big spread taking it over, because a team can really take their foot off the pedal. They can especially do it by taking their quarterback out of the game. So I'm worried to take that. So I'm not touching it, but Navy, Notre Dame, first half over 29.5 for 4 units. Nick is going with, again, sticking in the SEC with his card. He is taking the Auburn Tigers plus 7.5. They are headed to Vanderbilt. Now, here's the problem I have with that pick. 2 massive problems I have with that pick. The first one is Vanderbilt just lost. So this is not a look ahead, let down. This is nothing like that for Vanderbilt. This is we just got beaten. We kind of just got our asses handed to us. It's time to wake up, and we've got an inferior opponent. That's my first problem with it. And it's in Vanderbilt, which is not like going to Vanderbilt, 10 years ago. This is more of a SEC atmosphere than it has been. The second problem, the Auburn Tigers just fired their coach. So a lot of times when this happens, you get a new coach bounce. But normally with a new coach bounce, you see a team that's fired their coach play a team that's worse than them, or that's, in the same realm. They're going to the number 15 team in the country, not even playing them at home. So I have to say, Nick, it's probably good for him that I don't like it, but hate that pick. Hate it. But I'll talk for a second. Hugh Freeze was fired at Auburn. Terrible performance on Saturday. They put up 3 points. They've gotten unlucky a couple of times. We've talked about them a couple of times on this show. They've gotten unlucky because they've had a couple of calls not go their way. Couple of bad bounces. It happens. The ball doesn't bounce your way sometimes. But after the performance at home, 3 points at home, I can't say I hate it. This is I've never seen this many firings in the middle of a season. I don't think anyone has, and especially at major programs, not at Coastal Carolina here. We got no offense to Coastal, but we got Auburn, LSU, Penn State, Florida. I mean, take your pick. It has been crazy for the big programs, and I think you have to look at NIL with that too, because with the NIL situation right now, coaches aren't getting the grace period that they were beforehand. Because listen, you can get transfers and NIL, and you can get a team in now. Texas Tech did it. Texas Tech wasn't world beaters last year. They weren't even in the Big 12 championship. Arizona State and Iowa State were. They're one of the best teams in the country now. And look how much they spent over the offseason. They're an example of, you have NIL money, you have the transfers, you're a marquee program. I mean, Texas Tech's not on the level of Auburn, but for the example, go win. And you're not getting that grace period that you've gotten in previous years. And you're not keeping recruits like you were. And you're not recruiting the same way either. So college football has been shaken up this year, and we're going to continue to see it. We're going to continue to see it, especially at these places, Florida, LSU, Auburn, and Penn State. I'd actually take Florida off that list for a second, but of those teams, they're not teams where you're going to get to have a losing season or a 4 or 5 win season back to back. No, you have to win now. All right. I digress. Back to the picks. My 5-point pick. The Tulane Green Wave heading out Friday night to Memphis. Memphis now ranked. They are 8-1. They are ranked number 22. Big win over Rice. Big win over South Florida in the last 2 weeks. And Tulane, who many were picking to be the group of 5 team that made the playoff this year, a bad loss on Thursday to Texas San Antonio in San Antonio. Look, weird spot for Tulane there. Going to San Antonio off a bye, but then it was a Thursday night. UTSA hasn't always been the easiest place to play. You see some major teams have actually gone down there and had a lot of trouble. So I'm not deterred by that as much. I was one of the people that thought Tulane was in the conversation for that group of 5 team. Now, I think if you look at the 2 losses they had this year, they were absolutely embarrassed by Ole Miss, and then they were beaten pretty badly by UTSA. They have 0 shot to make the playoff, but I just think that they are still, in essence, that team I thought they were at the start of the year. That's, same players there, all that stuff. And, Memphis, okay, they had a big win against Rice. They had a big win against South Florida. They got beat by UAB the week before that. They don't really have a marquee win. I'm looking at their schedule right now, actually. Nothing jumps out at me. So they beat Arkansas, but Arkansas is not Arkansas. Arkansas is at the very bottom of the SEC, and Memphis beat them by 1 point at home. Anyway, so Memphis feels like a team that rides a hot streak. They get ranked for 1 week, and then they go down. I actually think Tulane might win this game outright, but you give me the 6.5 here, and I'll take it all day. I don't think that Memphis is a touchdown better than Tulane. And I think Tulane might even be better than them outright. So, listen, if you're out there and you want to do money line, I encourage that. But I'm just going to stick with the spread because I am a little worried about Tulane's defense, but still going to make it my 5-unit play. All right, Nick is sticking in the state of Alabama and finishing off his SEC card with the Alabama Crimson Tide minus 10.5 against LSU. Now, I'm not surprised that he picked this because he has been low on LSU the entire season, and he's been right most of that time. Listen, LSU, disaster season from what they were expected to be, from where they were at one point this year, and now they don't even have their coach. But they still have a lot of talent on that team. They did get killed by Texas A&M, but they were in the game for 3 quarters. They were leading for 2. The Vanderbilt game, they were in it, lost close. I don't think they're terrible. They have a lot of talent on the team. They lost to Ole Miss in a close one too. But Alabama is one of the better teams in the country. I'm just scared of that 10.5. I think Nick is thinking about what happened 2 weeks ago with A&M, where it's even for 2 quarters and then just goes crazy in the 3rd quarter. I don't know. With that one, the line scares me. And I'm worried about. It didn't sound like Brian Kelly is that much of a loved coach. If the coach was loved then I think a team's headed for disaster. If the coach was like, we don't really like this guy, bit of a hard ass, a bit of an asshole, all this stuff, the firing might give you a bump. Now, I'm in no way saying that LSU has a chance to win this game, but 10.5 does scare me a little bit. But Nick has been low on the Tigers all year, and he's been right in a lot of it. So, and Nick is different than me. He has no fear when it comes to Zoftic big lines. I get very queasy at double-digit lines. He does not. So I give him credit for that. We're that 05, yes. So let's go to the league where they play for pay. Listen, I have rode this team a couple of times this year, and it's been up and down, mainly down, but I've had some good ones. This is just an abomination of a football game that we're getting on Sunday. We might set low attendance records. Jets, Browns. I am on the Jets. The Jets are bad. That's obvious. They were the last team in the NFL to win a game. But if you look at their results, they were a 60-something yard field goal away from beating Pittsburgh. They were less than a minute away from beating Tampa Bay. They were like 5 yards and a bad coaching decision away from beating the Broncos. They've had bad luck. They're bad. They're bad. I'm not in any way saying that the Jets are good at all. Not at all. But they're not the worst team in the NFL when they go out and play there, like they have been record-wise, because they were the last team to win a game. They're just not. They've been in these games with good. They don't have the easiest schedule in the world. I mean, the teams that I just listed that they really should have beat: Broncos, Bucks, Steelers, playoff teams, and 2 of them, or 3 of them, actually, all 3 of them, lead their division. So they're not. Listen, I'm not saying that the Jets are great, but they're not that bad. They're not atrociously bad. They're badly coached. I could say that. But they've had chances, and the Browns, I think, on the opposite end, are really bad. I mean, in a rainy, sleety day, they beat the Dolphins up. The Dolphins suck, and the weather was terrible. Throw that out the window. The Packer game was handed to them. Besides that, I mean, what have they really done? They have not been in these games like the Jets have. I think the Jets are a much better team than the Browns. The Browns have a good defense, but what's it matter if they're on the field the whole time? He had 32 points to the Patriots last week. They've given up 41 this year. They've given up 34 this year. They're on the field all the time. So I don't care about the defense right now. I got the Jets -2. Nick is going with the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 1.5 next week. Jags heading out to Houston. Listen, I've kind of been high on the Texans this year. That's kind of bit me. I think I'm still sort of seeing first season CJ Stroud when I look at him. And I actually think it's tough right now to blame Stroud. The offensive line is abysmal. Just abysmal. So, I don't know how much of that is on Stroud. But I'm leaning more toward the Texans in this game, mainly because I just think that the Jaguars are just not really there yet. Again, really should have been beaten by the Raiders on Sunday. I don't know. It feels like the Jaguars are a team that are just not going to be able to compete this year. That's just what it feels like to me. It feels like the Colts division. I mean, I don't see how the Colts lose that division. But the Houston Texans are atrocious offensively. They did just beat the 49ers and were in a game with the Broncos, so I would lean more toward the Texans. But he's going Jaguars. So he's got Jaguars plus 1.5, which I think is not a terrible pick either. I mean, I'm not like confident about that one. All right, my 2-point pick, the Saints plus 5.5 going to Carolina. Saints are terrible, but I think Carolina is sort of coming off of this. What I was going to say was they're sort of not a 5-4 team. They don't have a ton of talent, but they're coming off of a big game where they just stunned the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. I think it's a letdown spot. I think the public is going to hammer the Panthers here. They're going to say, oh, the Saints are terrible. The Saints suck. Why are the Panthers only 5.5-point favorites? Give me the Panthers, give me the Panthers, give me the Panthers. And normally it's the other way around. Normally Vegas knows a little bit more than we do. Or sometimes they know a lot more than we do. And I think the Saints have looked bad and the Panthers have looked good, which means you should take the Panthers by logic. But by gambling logic, you're looking at that 5.5 and saying, you know what? It's going to switch around. Because everyone and their mother is going to be on that Panthers line. So I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going with the dogs. I'm going with the Saints plus 5.5. They don't have to win the game. They can stay in the game. I think the Panthers will win the game. And we'll have to deal with living in a world where the Panthers are 6-4, which is just crazy. But I think the Saints keep it close. And I think that this is one of those games that people are looking at and saying, oh my God, blowout city. Doesn't always work out that way. All right. Nick is going with the Detroit Lions laying 8.5 against the Washington Commanders, who are a mess right now on the field and with injuries. Last night, they were destroyed by the Seattle Seahawks. It was 28-0 at one point in the second quarter. It was 31-7 at halftime. 31-7 at halftime. It ended up 30, I believe Washington scored at the end, right? So it was 38-14. The storyline out of the game was Jaden Daniels, who was in the game, ran a designed run at about the 5-yard line and dislocated his elbow in what was a seriously, seriously gruesome injury. Now, most people are saying, well, why is he in the game at that point? Which I completely agree with. That's on the coach completely. He should have been taken out of the game. He's got a history of injuries. He's had 2 already this year. He's been sidelined this year twice with injury, including last week. And you have him in the game down 38-7. And not only do you have him in the game, you have him running designed runs. It don't make sense. That does not make sense. So give him the Lions minus 8.5. I agree. I mean, Lattimore went down too towards ACL for Washington, which was a big detriment to them because they were about to trade him. So they just lost whatever capital they were going to get from that. That was a bigger injury. They lost more in that injury than just him. They lost serious capital. It was bad. Washington are a mess right now. And you look at their schedule, they might not win 5 games this year after going to the NFC Championship last year. Just a mess. I agree with that. Lions coming off a loss. They're looking to hammer you. 4 o'clock start. But I agree with them. All right. I am going my 3-point play. I am going with the Baltimore Ravens laying 4 against the Minnesota Vikings. Here's another week where, like I said about the Panthers, the country will be hot on the Minnesota Vikings, who got a win against the Detroit Lions. Big NFL makes no sense game, come out and win that game after getting just destroyed by the Chargers. Different quarterback, I know, but I think everyone will be hot, and I think it's time for the Ravens now. The Ravens, I said on last week's show that I would still pick the Ravens to win the North. And I'm sticking with that, obviously, since they won last weekend. I just think with Lamar back, their offense is good enough to win the division, not Super Bowl. And they can compete. And I just think the Vikings are going to be, I mean, they're 4-4 now, and they look like a team that if we played 16 games instead of 17, they'd be 8-8. So they're a 500 team to me. Not a lot of quarterback talent there. Very talented receiver, but when you don't have a great quarterback throwing you the ball, it doesn't really make that huge of a difference. So I like the Ravens here to start their run. And if you look at their schedule, the run is definitely possible. Give me the Ravens laying 4 in Minnesota. All right. Nick is going with the Steelers plus 2.5. They are headed to LA. I will talk about this game a little bit later. I have this game picked, so I'll talk about that in a minute. For my 4-point play, I am going with the Giants-Bears over 48.5. The Bears defense is not very good. The Giants run defense is really not very good. The Giants offense is a breath of fresh air from what we've been seeing as Giants fans for the last decade, frankly. They can score, and Dart can sling it. So I'm taking the over here. I don't know which way to touch the game, but because I just think the Giants are kind of out of it now. They're really hitting a slide. They've lost now 4 in a row, they've lost 3 in a row, 4 or 5. I don't know if they're going to come out and cover spreads and whatever. Really, I think you're going to see. Now, the Giants have a tough schedule, so it's tough to say that they're going to win X amount of games or whatever because it's tough. But you're going to see what the locker room thinks of Daboll, because Brian Daboll started 7-2 his first year in his first 9 games. The first 9 games of the season post that, he has started 2-7, 1, 2, 3 years in a row. This is the third. So there is no excuse to keep Brian Daboll except for one. If Jackson Dart looks really good, which he has, but he has to look, phenomenal in the last 8 games for me to say, hey, let's keep Daboll. So I think that you're going to see what the locker room thinks of Daboll, depending on how hard they play. And the fact of the matter is, I just don't know either way what's going to happen. Nick does think he knows, because he is in the same game. He is taking the Giants plus 3.5. Again, I think it's definitely possible. I think it's possible the Giants can win. I frankly think the Giants on a given Sunday could beat any single team in the NFL. I think most teams could at this point, but they should have beat the Broncos. They beat the Eagles. So I don't think that the Giants are ever in a game where I'm like, there's zero chance. But again, I just don't know what kind of team we're going to see, and they're so banged up. So I don't know about that pick. I'll stick with my over, but he is taking the Giants plus 3.5. All right, final pick. I just talked about it with Nick. I just mentioned it with Nick's pick. I got the Chargers. I'm on the opposite side of Nick. I think the Chargers. I said on last week's show I thought the Titans would cover because of the game being on the East Coast, and they did, but the Chargers won. I think the Chargers are a good team. I just, I throw those West Coast, East Coast games in the trash a little bit. And the Chargers are at home. It's not a huge advantage. There'll be a lot of Steelers fans there. But I think the Chargers are a good team. I think the Steelers are the Steelers. Like, this is what the Steelers have been for the last 8 years. They'll go 9-8, and they'll lose in the first round. And right now they're 5-3. They're 5-3. So I don't think they're gonna get to some insane record. So I like the Chargers here. I just think the Chargers are better at most positions. Yes, they have another tackle out there. Their offensive line is just banged up perpetually, but I am on the Chargers. I think that it's more of an anti-Steelers. I just don't think the Steelers are as great than it is a pro-Charger bet. Nick's. Sorry, I just did my 5-point play. Nick's 5-point play is the Packers laying 2.5 points on Monday Night Football next week, not tonight's game, against the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, I like it. And I'll tell you why. Because of last week's game. I think last week you had yesterday you had a little bit of a look ahead. We got the Eagles coming into town. That's the game to probably what most would consider two of the best teams, if not the two best teams in the NFL. And we got the Carolina Panthers coming in. That'll be easy. Lost, but now maybe that wakes you up a little bit against a team that's on a long bye, because they're playing on a Monday night. I actually like that pick. I understand it. All right, let's go to the money line winner of the week. I am going to go with the San Francisco 49ers to beat the LA Rams, and that is at plus 150. Rams going out to San Francisco. San Francisco are banged up, but they looked pretty good last week with Christian McCaffrey doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They should have some players back, it's looking like, for this game. And the Rams have already beaten the 49ers this year. So if I'm looking for value, getting a team at home that's beaten a team on the road already this year, plus 150, to me, that is very good value. So it's not, when we pick these money line games, it's always a money line underdog. So it's not exactly something that we're overly confident over. But it is something where you look at it and you say, okay, that's serious value. And I think that is value. I mean, you have a team that's at home, beat this team on the road, and they're plus 150. That's some value right there. Nick agrees with me on my pick of the Saints, and he is going to take them plus 218 for his money line winner. I like it. Like I just said, Carolina in a letdown spot. Everyone's on them. 218 is terrific value in the NFL. You don't get the 218 much in the NFL. I like it. All right. Locks of the week time. Let's start in college. I talked about them earlier, and I picked them earlier for the first half, but my lock is going to be for the full game. I said earlier, I'm taking Texas Tech in a blowout over BYU. They're laying 10.5. I'm doubling down on them. I'm taking the 10.5. It's a big line, which I said earlier, I'm not the fondest of big lines, but I am hot on this Texas Tech team, and I am not low, but lower than most pundits and predictions about BYU. And I just think this is going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be a week where you separate the boys from the men, you separate the contenders from pretenders. And Texas Tech are the far and away favorite, the best team in the Big 12. BYU will probably be played again this game in the Big 12 championship game. But I just think Texas Tech is way better. It's in Lubbock at noon. This is going to be a blowout in my opinion. So I've got Texas Tech. I'm locking them up minus 10.5. Nick is going with the team he rode last week, the USC Trojans, laying 10.5. Laying 14.5 against Northwestern. Yes. I like this. Friday night, under the radar game, 6:00 start in LA, 9:00 Eastern, 8:00 in Chicago. I like it. I like it. I said on the show last a couple weeks ago, I thought Nebraska was going to bring Northwestern back down to earth from where they've been in the last few weeks, and they did. Northwestern had some decent wins against Penn State. That was a good win, but obviously, Penn State is our perception of Penn State is completely changed. They beat Purdue, who's just horrific. So I had a feeling that they were going to come way back down to earth against Nebraska, and they did. And USC is actually a pretty good team. They have a serious shot at getting to the playoff, at least as an outside bid right now. If they win out, they'll probably almost certainly do it because they would have beaten Oregon in order to get there. So this is a game you have to win. By far, you have to win for USC. You lose this game, it's beyond over. But yeah, I agree with him. I think USC blows Northwestern out of the water. That's Nick's lock of the week is USC minus 14.5. All right, my NFL lock of the week. I am going with the Tampa Bay Bucks laying 2.5 against the New England Patriots. The Patriots are 7-2, and their schedule has been easy to say the very least. It is one of the easiest schedules I've ever seen in the National Football League. They have played the Raiders, Dolphins, Steelers, Panthers, Bills, Saints, Titans, Browns, and Falcons. Their schedule after next week will play the Jets, Bengals, Giants, Bills, Ravens, and Jets. So what I'm saying is you got smoke and mirrors right now with the New England Patriots. You got smoke and mirrors right now. I think May is a good quarterback. I do. I think the Patriots have some talent, but they're not there yet. They're still a ways away. Not saying they won't get there. I think they probably will, but they're not a 7-2 team on field. I think the Buccaneers are. I think the Buccaneers might have a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and you're laying because of the Patriots' record. You're laying 2.5. I think you take those records out and look at the teams on paper, you might get a close to double-digit spread in this. I think this is some really good value for the Bucs at 2.5. I know the Bucs have a million injuries, but they have a good team, and they've been able to deal with those injuries. They've been able to weather the storm very well. And I just think the Patriots have not played the class of the league yet. Yes, they did beat the Bills, but the Bills' defense is not terrific, and the Bills made a storming comeback, and that game had a chance to win. Other than that, you really have just an insanely easy schedule. And I just think, I mean, when you're talking about the Falcons, Browns, Patriots, Falcons, Browns, Titans, Saints as their last four opponents, they are moving up a weight class like you read about. And 1:00 game on Sunday, that's my lock of the week. Buccaneers minus 2.5. Lock that up. All right. Nick is agreeing with me on a pick that I made earlier of the Baltimore Ravens going into Minnesota and winning handily. He is going at the Ravens minus 4 as well. That is his lock of the week. So that is the picks for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in to Unnecessary Wagers. Thank you for watching, and we will be back